in Omaha.
K bullshit. I used to work at K bullshit, didn't you?
It was good. K bullshit was a fun station to work for, honestly.
All right, there it is. Okay.
Oh,
This over
bastard.
here. Okay.
All right, I'm ready.
Let me just make sure this is. I got a spinning ball right now. We'll have to wait till that's over.
How did that happen?
Okay, we're good. We're good. And we begin. It is the Brad and Britt cast. We're glad you're with us here. Our second one for this week. That was the Joe Biden cough there. Did you notice that? Where you're just talking and you give a and you keep talking. You notice that?
Nice.
People think that's a death rattle when he does that. They think that that's proof that he's got 5 days to live or something, but it's not true.
Right.
It happens with all of us who are over 30. So
it's true.
Just disregard it. And I guess I should say right now, if you hear all kinds of extraneous noises or whatever, I'm working under less than ideal conditions today. Just outside of my window, outside of my house, on the AT&T has I don't know if it's hundreds, it's a lot of people all up and down my street and in my neighborhood, and they are digging deep and they're laying some new pipe, in the words of Hugh Hefner. You see what I did there?
That's not at all.
Anyway, they're tearing up everybody's yards, and it's a mess. So they make a lot of noise. For some reason, our dog T-Berry hates AT&T. And by the way, that's like everybody hates Chris, everybody hates Cruz,
Sure.
everybody hates Trump. So everybody hates AT&T, and now I really hate them.
Okay. So T-Berry will be saluting the good people at AT&T. There he is from time to time, talking about what a great job they're doing and what a wonderful company they've been all these years.
Right. Okay.
So they split that company. Weren't they going to split that company up or something?
Today? Well, actually, I think today is the day they made some kind of announcement, of which is very technical, and for all the shareholders, of which I am not one anymore.
Thank God.
All right. Not to be confused with. Do you wonder why Brad switched guys that he has to? Because the other guy loved AT&T, and I didn't like that. And you know what? I stand by it. Turns out I'm right. But that's a little personal, isn't it? Isn't that a little bit personal?
It's perfectly fine. Perfectly fine.
Perfectly fine. AT&T down another 4% today on that. It's a piece of it's fuck. They don't know what the fuck they're doing.
Really?
Yeah. Anyhow, I would like to broach a subject we don't often talk about here in any kind of detail. We just make smarmy references to it. Sometimes we dive in and then we get right back out of the pool. But it just seems you just can't get away with Holocaust references, analogies, and metaphors, mostly, almost exclusively done by Republicans these days in all kinds of different forms. Now, we'll get to the current moment in a second.
Mm-hmm.
But we know what the old thinking was on this. It was based on Godwin's law, which is any online discussion, which eventually quickly became any discussion about anything, anywhere, anytime, that deteriorates down to the level of someone hurling the Nazi card at someone else, calling them a Nazi, or invoking the Holocaust, of course, to say your policy is like blah. It's over. Discussion's over. end the call, end the thread, and that's about more than 20 years old. That thing,
Sure.
And that's one of those things that it kind of is cute, sounds reasonable, and for the most part, if you live by that, you'd be okay.
Sure.
The T-Berry agrees. But I would like to make the case here, because the defense of what all these Republicans or idiots are doing, the idiot who's not a Republican, who's in the news right now, and this is Whoopi Goldberg.
Yeah.
Okay, she said something just stupid as shit.
Mm-hmm.
The Holocaust wasn't about race. Mm-hmm. It was about just people being mean to each other. So she got tagged for that and went crawling to Stephen Colbert's show on Monday night and claimed, "I'll never talk about it again." You see, that isn't the answer. The answer is don't ever talk about the Holocaust. Just don't make stupid remarks that are ignorant about it if you know nothing about it. And by the way, I think one of her punishments should be she should have to turn in that name Goldberg that she uses. Okay, yeah. You have no right to call yourself Goldberg, because that's not her born name, right?
I think Karen Wheeler is her actual
right
birth name, Christian name, whatever you want to call it.
All right, so speaking on behalf of all Jews, we're taking back the Goldberg. Okay, we're taking back the Goldberg. You can have Wiener Schnitzel or something like that, whatever you want. But that's just Exhibit A in recent moments. Then we have Lara Logan, who was a star reporter, made it all the way to 60 Minutes, was doing well, and then suddenly she lost her fucking mind. She went nuts. And about a month ago or so, she decided to go all in and say that Dr. Fauci was, in effect, the equivalent of Dr. Joseph Mengele, the Nazi doctor who did experiments on prisoners and twins and horrible things. He's just, you say the name and you know what you're getting there. And she compared Fauci and his attempt to apparently force at gunpoint everyone in the world to get a vaccine. It was just idiotic. So what happened? She's been long gone from CBS. She's been gone from there for doing dumber shit than that, even possibly years ago. But her talent agency dropped her a couple weeks ago. And even worse, she's been ghosted by Fox. She is gone. She's toast. You have to be pretty bad to be tossed off of Fox for saying things that initially usually are never pushed back on in the original segment, right? When she said that, was there a big pushback at that moment? No, of course not. It took a while for it to get out there. And then over the weekend, and by the way, these are just three examples. You had Governor Ron DeSantis, the Trump wannabe, who is being tagged, rightfully so, because on Saturday, I guess about 20 Nazis stood along the boulevard in Orlando, hurling anti-Semitic invective through a bullhorn at people passing by. Just the worst shit you could ever imagine. Just trying to disrupt everything. It was immediately denounced by anybody who's decent. So, of course, that did not include Ron DeSantis. He ignored it. He ignored it all day Saturday. He ignored it all day Sunday. And finally, on Monday, he stepped forward with an unbelievable non-acknowledgement of how stupid and off-key he is by ignoring this, by saying, the Democrats are trying to smear me. Of course, he should have said, they're trying to schmear me. See what I did there? But he didn't do that. You see, Britt, we can do that because I'm a Jew.
That's correct. You have license.
Right. And he accused the Democrats of trying to use this terrible, terrible incident to tar him. So he takes the Trumpian, everything is all about me, to kind of a new level, don't you think? This was not all about you. Even your fellow Republican cohort in Florida, piece of shit Rick Scott, knew what to say and said the right thing. and denounced it and said there's no place for this in Florida. And if DeSantis would have said that, it would have been it. It would have been done. Yeah, done. Well, the authorities will take measures to handle this. But for all right, on and on again. You could come up with a million examples here in the last week. Oh, you want another? Oh, I know you wanted another one. Here we go. Remember that idiot Massey, Tom Massey, the guy from Kentucky. I think he's the one that posed with his family, all holding guns
yeah,
as their Christmas cards. Well, let's see. He was quoting over the weekend Voltaire, or so he thought. And he used the quote he thought was from Voltaire that says, "To learn who rules over you, simply find out who you are not allowed to criticize. You mustn't question Fauci, for he is science," Massey wrote sneeringly alongside the image in a reference to Dr. Anthony Fauci, director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases. Well, it turns out that quote is not from Voltaire. And he put it in a meme. Turns out it was from a guy named Kevin Strom, not related to Thurmond. That's his last name. He is described by the Southern Poverty Law Center as a dogmatic neo-Nazi, was convicted of child porn back in 2008, did a couple years in prison, and that's his quote. Okay, so Massey quotes a neo-Nazi or a Nazi. Well, I think we should drop the neo anymore, don't you think? And attributes it to the world famous Voltaire. American Jewish Committee responded, noting it was said by this guy named Strom. They called on him to delete it. We expect better of our representatives in Congress. All right, the American Jewish Committee is wrong. We don't expect any better from our representatives in Congress anymore, do we? Do we?
No,
do we?
no.
I don't think we do. But
why would we?
Okay, all right.
So we've taken you on a tour from Whoopi Goldberg all the way to Tom Massey.
Yeah, right. All right. So here's the point. One of the sweeping justifications or defenses of what's going on right now in terms of mostly Republicans plus Whoopi Goldberg, and there are lots of other Republican examples I can come up with. There are two. Number one, well, what about the Democrats? They have Ilhan Omar in the House of Representatives. They have Rashida Tlaib, the squad. Blah, blah. What about them? Why aren't you talking about them? All right, that's the first one. And then the other one is there's never been in the history of the United States a 4-year period where someone was called a Nazi more than Donald Trump. So you have nothing to say now about what's going on right now in terms of, say, comparing Anthony Fauci to Joseph Mengele. And in the broadest sense, there might be some technical truth to that because it is true. I think we call Donald Trump Nazi-like or using the techniques of Hitler a lot.
Let me allow me to explain why. Because he often excused, as he did in Charlottesville, the behavior of actual Nazis. That's why he was compared to Nazis. Because again, while not all Trump voters and Trump fans are Nazis, all Nazis are Trump fans. If you may use the logical thing there, that's what happens.
Well, I think you just built the first block of this. Let me add on what I think is an intelligent nuance of the difference between 4 years of calling Donald Trump a Nazi and what's going on right now. Because when you or I or other would call Donald Trump a Nazi, everyone knew that we did not mean that we were weeks, days, maybe months from a meeting where it would be decided that millions of Jews in the United States would be rounded up and murdered like Nazi Germany in the 40s under Hitler. That's not what we ever thought. and I believe this, and now actually I believe it more today than actually 24 hours ago as I learned more. What we were always saying about Donald Trump was that he was using the techniques of Hitler and his rise to power and his disdain for democracy and his thirst to be the permanent leader of his country. Maybe the Fifth Reich. I don't know what you would have called it here had Trump succeeded. And of course, the story has not finished yet. But I think there's a big difference between that, because remember, every president, even before Trump, was always called a Nazi. You can look up, if you look up George W. Bush with Hitler mustache, you'll find the pictures. If you look up Barack Obama with a Hitler mustache, they'll find you the pictures, right? And therefore, it doesn't wash to try to excuse what's going on right now by saying that, well, Trump was the biggest victim of this, so shut up, okay? Because Godwin's law, if it hasn't been officially repealed, ought to be right now. We ought to just get it over with. But you got to be correct. And in preparing for today's podcast, it's hard to believe I actually did some preparations here. I read a great piece. It was written just a month ago, at the beginning of January, in The Nation. And you want the comparison that may be more illustrative of what's been going on in the country the last few years. And you and I were not the only ones who have said along the way, there are certain things that are reminiscent of Germany in the 1930s when they would happen, between alternative facts, the Muslim ban, the call for violence at public gatherings. That was all, you can look it up. It's true. That's
well, also, the incidence of violence against Jews over the past 5 years has been ramped up dramatically for some strange, odd reason.
Britt, that's just a wonderful side effect.
It's just a coincidence.
It wasn't. No, but it wasn't the point. It's just one of those bonuses. Okay,
for some reason.
Don't question the bonus. Right. So it was a kind of a brief history of what happened in Nazi Germany and the rise of Hitler in a way that I'd never seen it explained. And here it is. The famous beer hall putsch, which was a young Adolf Hitler's attempt to upset the apple cart, so to speak, 1923. It didn't work. All right. Now put that alongside of January 6th, 2021. And guess what? It didn't work, did it? All right. So what happened to Hitler right after that? He was arrested and he was convicted, and so were the people around him. Hitler went to jail for 9 months, and the Nazi Party spent the rest of the 1920s treading water, going nowhere. They never could get more than 1 or 2% in any election. In other words, Hitler was squashed, okay? It wasn't until the Great Depression in 1929, when the economy of Germany went upside down, that Hitler was able to make more ground and appeal as the populist thug that he was, with all the hints that he was dropping about what he would do if he ever became the leader of Germany. But the broad point is, it's almost a 10-year gap between his original move to try to seize power in 1923 and him becoming chancellor in 33. Okay, that's now, we're a long way from 10 years from now. But at this moment, although things are happening very quickly on the legal front, and we're learning that, as always, it isn't just bad, it's worse than we ever thought. I mean, now we know that Trump tried three strikes and he was out. He tried the Justice Department, he tried the Department of Homeland Security, right? And what was the third? And William Barr himself. I mean, he went over and over and over again to different agencies to see who would try to do his dirty. He went to the Pentagon. Well, you seized the voting machines. He went to all three: Homeland Security, the Pentagon, and the Justice Department. All of them said no. And so, therefore, you got to January 6th, and Trump wasn't reinstalled as president. But we're a year later, and Trump is still running around. And over the weekend, he planted all those seeds as if nothing in the past had ever happened, and he's just starting from ground zero again. If I get prosecuted, take to the streets. Take to the streets. So we're in a very perilous moment, and we talked about this at the end of the previous podcast. The shocking percentage of people in this country who are fully 100% disengaged and ignorant of what's going on, or have been spun into believing that Donald Trump is a victim of everything that's going on around him. It's pretty high. It's too damn high. It's enough to be really, really distressed over the occurrences that we're seeing right now. So my thesis is that direct Holocaust comparisons are just idiotic. Okay, there is nothing like the Holocaust although you could say what the guy did in Cambodia, Pol Pot, right? Didn't he march a couple million people to their deaths out in right?
Sure.
But again, and you could use that word. What Mao Zedong did in China, tens of millions of people killed. Stalin, but the Holocaust in Europe, in Germany, in Poland, where the concentration camps were mostly set up, that's a unique circumstance, and you should just leave the word alone. Don't go for it. It doesn't work. It's not helpful. But Donald Trump, Hitler-like in his thirst for absolute power at any cost, and an overthrowing of the government as we know it right now, the system that is set up, I think it's a fair comparison. I think it's not crazy at all. And I guess the wiggle out of it is going to be to conflate calling someone like Donald Trump a person who is using Nazi, Hitler-like techniques of propaganda and calling for violence and racism with the Holocaust itself. They're conflating those and saying, you can't say this because that's the same as that. And no, I say it is not. I rest my case.
Well, and this is one where the media always does the both sides argument. Well, these people say that Biden is like a Nazi because he's making you wear a mask, and these people say Trump is like a Nazi, so they're both the same. The Democrats and Republicans are exactly the same.
Sorry, you're only 100% right, because what we just talked about for the last 15 minutes does include the get out of jail free card for the Fox types and the Trumpers, and it's spelled Whoopi Goldberg. What about Whoopi? How come you didn't say anything about Whoopi? We fucking did say, so shut up. She's not getting a pass.
Anytime you would have Ted Nugent say something about trying to kill Hillary Clinton or something like that, as time would go on, they would bring up Kathy Griffin. What about Kathy Griffin? They would do it. There was always some sort of shit like this side does this side they're the same. So it's not the original sin of the Trump administration when he was sworn in was Charlottesville. And it was excusing the behavior of Nazis. That's what he did. And it took him 3 shots at that before he finally condemned Nazis, which used to be automatic in this country, as you say. It used to be something that wasn't hard.
I think that while that's technically true, I think the timing, remember, that's almost a full year into his first term, right? That's in the summer of 2017, maybe a half year. That campaign leading up to the election of 2016 was full of moments that in retrospect would make Charlottesville almost inevitable. between that announcement, and I remember there's video of it, where kind of out of nowhere he called a press conference and he read off a piece of paper. It was the I, Donald J. Trump, call for the immediate ceasing of Muslims into the country. Remember that?
I love those. Those were great.
Right. But that was already, and that was during the campaign. That was already a big fat flare.
I mean, if you want to go back to the original racism was, of course, challenging Barack Obama's birth certificate and saying he wasn't. I mean, there was racism, obviously. That was
into that. I'll see you and raise you. His original public racism was the Central Park Five. Accusing. So that was like 30 years ago. So the guy's a veteran. He's a veteran at this.
When he got into office and he started excusing the behavior of Nazis and he started minimizing that, which is exactly what they did. And by the way, on several public forums, when he excused their behavior, they took it as an attaboy. They would show them going, well, that was nothing. He didn't rebuke us at all. He does love us. Even though he would say, and then eventually you get to during the debates, Proud Boys, stand back and stand by. That was another great one that he did. And those guys are fucking Nazis in and of themselves. If you see them in that footage of January the 6th, 2021, with their paramilitary gear and all that shit, it certainly looks like, I don't know, Third Reich guys stormtroopers trying to storm into the United States Capitol. So yes, of course, as we clean up a couple of points here and go back and pick through the ruins of your tour de force. I love DeSantis saying it's just unfair for the Democrats. It's just unfair for them to use this against him. It's not right. This motherfucker uses any tool in the shed to bang on Joe Biden or any Democrat he possibly can every single time. If an alligator takes a shit on the side of A1A, he'll somehow blame that on Joe Biden. Here he is crying that the Democrats are using the. He'll fundraise off. Hasn't he fundraised off of that Brandon shit? He'll do anything to bang a Democrat, but it's just not right for them. They need to play fair, Brad. It's very important that the Democrats play fair when they criticize Ron DeSantis. Give me a freaking break.
Well, I think to close out this brilliant dissertation here. As we could look back over the let's call it the 6-year period here, it all fits together, right? It all fits together, and there's never an off ramp. It never stops. It never goes away. It only gets worse, and we're at the moment, kind of right now, this very perilous moment where decent Americans are depending on the system to work and to work well and to start prosecuting and to start convicting people around Donald Trump and eventually Donald Trump himself. To speak positive about what's been going on recently, Donald Trump is always his own worst enemy. He's always his own worst enemy, right? And he's always, you've heard this 8 million times, Trump is the guy who has decided that his technique is to tell you what he's going to do it, and then say, fuck you, do something about it. All right? And that could be whether he's buying a wrench at Home Depot, which is, I'm going to go into Home Depot. I'm going to take a wrench. I'm not going to pay for it. Do something about it. Okay. And nobody will do something about it. They say, well, it's not important enough. It's only a wrench kind of thing. And so that's his whole life, right? That's everything that he's ever done. And so at this moment, he is, I would hope, if he has any kind of brain matter, I hope he is scared shitless, because 5 ways from Sunday, the evidence is now there. It's all out there. It isn't about getting him to appear in front of the Congress in a few weeks personally. It isn't about whether Mark Meadows or Steve Bannon appear. They got it. They've got everything they need. They got it all. This story that was broken yesterday, that Trump, and we always talk about him as this mob boss kind of figure, right? That he's so unsophisticated that when the shit hit the fan and I referenced Richard Nixon, who 5 years after Watergate said, I should have burned the tapes. I told Haldeman to burn the tapes, and Haldeman said it's probably not a good idea. So we didn't burn the tapes. I should have burned the tapes. So Trump, not being a student of history, has apparently enough documents that are written on paper, and he knows that you're supposed to preserve them for the National Archives. So he apparently just rips them up like this, okay? And the National Archives, with a ready supply of Scotch tape, I'm holding up some Scotch tape, can actually put them back together. So he didn't rip them up into like a million little pieces. He just probably ripped them once in half, which is what you do when you're firing someone. Hey, get the fuck out of my office, rip a piece of paper.
Here's the funny thing about the White House. I think they have those paper shredding machines that all the kids are using now.
Apparently not. No, they don't. Too high tech, Britt. It's so delightful and so ignorant and so stupid. And I'm not saying, gee, I wish Donald Trump was just a little bit smarter. He could have shredded things that maybe would be incriminating and he'd get away with it. No, this is not like Nixon and the tapes, okay? Because that really was the thing that put everything over the edge, okay? And I'm sure that there's not one document we're talking about right now that's coming over from the National Archives, not one that Trump could have ripped in half, that if it wasn't put back together would have been the one that killed him, would have been the smoking gun. So it's not a perfect comparison, but I like it. I like it. And if you were in Trump's position in the White House and the walls were closing in and you had a stack of documents on paper that had not been memorialized electronically, and you really wanted to get rid of them, the last thing you would do is just rip them in half and put them in the wastebasket, right? You just wouldn't do it. How stupid can you be? You can't be any dumber than that.
It's kind of the irony is that when Nancy Pelosi ripped up his speech that time, he was doing the exact same thing to documents inside the White House using her technique. That's one of the great things. He just rips them up, and then they go, "Oh, you know what? I guess we can't look at those. They've been ripped up." Oh no! As you point out, they have this product from 3M called Scotch tape, and somehow puts the documents back together again.
And wait a minute, you just brought up a good whataboutism. Well, how come they didn't accuse her of destroying evidence? What about her?
What about they tape his speech back together? What about that? That would be some great whataboutism.
Yeah.
The story about the seizure of the voting machines, the details on this this is where, again, heaven is in the details on this thing. And there's so many great details. Apparently the guy, even crazy ass, out of his mind, unbelievably nuts, Rudy Giuliani said no to the idea of the military seizing the voting machines. He was the guy, as Sidney Powell and some of these other people would say, why don't we just get the troops to march in there with guns, grab the machines? And even Rudy Giuliani said, no, we can't. That's just too nuts even for me, which I think is great that somehow Rudolph Giuliani is the voice of reason there.
Right. Well, I'm sorry, but one moment of sanity in a sea of sickness does not save you from drowning. So he doesn't get to use that as any kind of defense, because I mean, this is a guy that went around the country testifying falsely about local elections. Remember, he would fly in, he would swoop in. Yeah, and then they had that picture of him with the fucking dye dripping down his head. That's his epitaph picture, right? That's going to be the one.
When they published the obituary in the New York Times, that is the picture. They should be required to use that picture. I don't give a shit about it. Shouldn't be some 9/11 thing where he's marching around the streets of people following him. It should be that one. That's the one it should be.
Right. Well, the Times will definitely take the high road. If Giuliani died tomorrow, they would use the picture of him as mayor of New York 20 years ago. They would do that because it is, it's a New York. They do that just out of general courtesy, but that wouldn't absolve Giuliani, nor would it prevent them using the picture elsewhere in the obituary. Which I assume that Giuliani is of the age now that they've already pre-written one for him.
Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely.
However, there's got to be a lot of empty space, a lot of empty pages, Donald Trump, white pages of paper, okay, for them to add more. if they need to, because his story isn't over with either.
One of the things in the New York Times piece about this voting machines deal is the guy who was kind of the mastermind of this thing becomes this Svengali-like figure named Phil Waldron. Did you read about this guy from somewhere in Shithead, Texas? He owns a distillery or something, and he would come up with PowerPoint presentations, and they did like essentially at the White House, they had an open casting call of all of the batshit ideas that would allow them to destroy American democracy and steal the election. And Phil Waldron said, "I'm your boy," and he would have a PowerPoint display ready to say, well, you could have the military do it, you could have Homeland Security do it, you could have the Department of Justice could go in, and everybody, again, this is how close we were to losing everything. If you would have had some dumbass that would have went along with the plan and said, okay, as it turns out, Cuccinelli over there, I guess Cuccinelli was at Homeland Security, and he goes, that's stupid. Now, I think it was a non-starter in and of itself at the Pentagon, and nobody at the Pentagon went, maybe you've got a point. And the Department of Justice was Bill Barr was like, no, we're not doing, it was unbelievable what happened there, that they were just kind of shutting it down. But again, if you have one sympathetic ear and you have one guy say, well, yeah, let's march in and grab the machines, then America is pretty much over. They did point out that Mike Pence could have overturned the election. That's one of the quotes from Donald Trump in that Conroe, Texas freak show over the weekend. This is one of my favorites, though. You had the battle of the crazies, people on one side, people on the other side, and these people were desperately trying to get their ideas, their crazy batshit ideas through to Donald Trump, but they were getting cock-blocked because Mark Meadows would turn into literally a goalkeeper. It says, when Mr. Flynn, Miss Powell, and Mr. Byrne, this is some of the crazy-ass lawyers, arrived at the White House to discuss their plan to use the military to seize voting machines, they were not let into the Oval Office by a typical gatekeeper like Mark Meadows. Mark Meadows was there, and he would go, no. You guys go ahead to the vending machines, grab your White House M&Ms, and get out of here.
Well, wait a minute. Then shouldn't he be more than happy to speak that truth to the country and testify in public about that? Because that sounds like I should be being thanked. I shouldn't be subpoenaed. Wow. I shouldn't be charged with that. I stopped so there's a disconnect there between, again, that's another one of those that might be true, but that doesn't absolve him from all the other shit, right?
Well, that particular story that I'm just showing now to people that are watching, Trump gave $1 million to Meadows nonprofit weeks after the January 6th panel's creation. So if you that Donald Trump is doing favors for Mark Meadows, so he'll shut the fuck up in one way or the other. So anyway, these people were still able to get into the Oval Office and to see Donald Trump, not through promises of food, although if you wave a Whopper at him and he smells it, he'll probably let you in there. Mr. Trump's chief of staff, of course, wouldn't let him in. Rather, they were escorted in by this guy named Garrett Ziegler, a young aide to another Trump advisor, Peter Navarro. Of course, Peter Navarro's name comes up time and again as another batshit crazy guy who was just feeding all kinds of nonsense to Donald Trump. Garrett Ziegler says, I waved in General Flynn and Sidney Powell on the Friday night of the 18th, for which Mark Meadows revoked my guest privileges, Ziegler said in a podcast, adding that he was frustrated with the current counsel Mr. Trump was getting. Even Mr. Giuliani, who had spent weeks peddling some of the most outrageous claims about election fraud, felt the idea of bringing in the military was beyond the pale. So if you come there and you can't get in, Brett, you can't get into the Oval Office to see the most powerful man in the world, there's always some shit-faced, freckle-faced asshole over here who gets Peter Navarro coffee and sandwiches. He'll let you into the Oval Office, but eventually Mark Meadows goes, why did you do that, Ziegler? Fuck you. You're not allowed in anymore. Get out of here. So again, this is as they continue to try to subvert democracy and steal the election, they were still what we really banked on and what really has saved our country, in addition to one or two brave people standing up, is their complete and total incompetence. Their inability to do anything correctly. If there would have been 1/10 of a teaspoon of more competence among these people, I don't know where we would be as a country right now. I have no idea where we would be as a country, and I don't know if we might even be embroiled in a civil war at this point if these guys would have had any kind of effectiveness or any kind of any kind of competence.
But think about what you're saying, which is correct. But that's not something that you want to hang your second hat on. Okay.
No.
Because if every attempted coup is just a rehearsal for the next attempt, then they're going to learn from their mistakes, assumedly, if they're still walking the streets, if they're still allowed to be out there. And I don't know whether that's going to happen or not. But back to the German analogy here, we like to think of, well, here's what happened in Germany. Hitler came along, and he was tricky, and he figured out how to use the system to attain power. End of story. Okay, so like Germany, we have better safeguards. It can't just happen here. But it's not quite true. It's not quite true like that at all. You have to look at the timeline. It was a 10-year gap from his first attempt to where he became persona non grata and had nothing going on, to circumstances being ripe for him to make the comeback. The Depression at the end of the 20s into the 30s, and to be able to blame the stab in the back after World War I. But he bided his time. But we're not on that timeline at all right now, okay? Because we can see in front of our eyes the plotting and scheming to overthrow our government right now, if not by a direct physical assault on the United States Capitol again, a second time. You never do the same thing twice. They're doing it by going full cockroach through every state, every city, every school board, every elected position possible, to try to get sympathizers in there to, when the moment is right, to be able to upset rule of law at all kinds of different levels. And you can upset rule of law. It doesn't have to only happen in Washington, D.C. It can happen everywhere. It happens in states. It happens with gerrymandering. It happens with judges. And that's what they're doing. And I don't think we have 10 years to wait for this to either blow up in our face, or for us to be able to say, oh, it's a historical moment that passed. I don't think we have 10 years. And
the threat is still very real. And I think that's part of the point of prosecuting these people. And that's been the criticism of Merrick Garland, is hurry, 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 hurry. I do believe that in the end, Merrick Garland is going to get the job done and prosecute these people. But then, the real fly in the ointment is the backpedaling and the excuse making and all this other stuff from that pronouncement on Saturday that Donald Trump's going to pardon the January 6th rioters, the insurrectionists. And you see again, I think you're right. You have to ask every Republican that you see in every hall of Congress, everywhere you can, do you think that they should be pardoned? Do you think that that's an appropriate thing if Donald Trump gets back into office? And then hamana. Watch them try to stutter over that and try to explain it and try to minimize that.
Oh, that's for each person to decide for themselves whether that should be. That's bullshit.
Of course it is.
The only thing I haven't seen is somebody try to pull the old "I didn't see the speech." I haven't read that. I don't know what you're talking. They didn't. They knew they couldn't get away with that one. So,
well, the beauty of these rallies and all this stuff is that anybody that's trying to get any oxygen, like DeSantis or Greg Abbott or Ted Cruz, to be the nominee in 2024, they can't, because this asshole steals every bit of oxygen out of the room. Right? He can't keep it. They can't get any traction on anything. They're all just asked to react to shit that he says. Right?
Well, I don't know whether I'd call that the beauty. And maybe it is. Maybe we're better off in the long run. It's hard to think of this, of Trump being the nominee and being wiped out, versus a more clever version of him like DeSantis, or even, God forbid, Greg Abbott, or any of these people, having a little bit more mass appeal without the baggage of being Donald Trump and being able to actually win in 2024. So I wouldn't look at the fact that he's, crowding out everyone else from publicly saying that they're in, except for DeSantis, who is doing it by default by saying that I'm not ruling out running. He never says anything about it, so he's the only one. Everybody else has moved to the side of the road. I don't know whether we should look at that as a good thing or not. I don't think it is. The longer he's on the scene, it's just bad. There's just nothing.
Do you agree with the statement that the best chance for Democrats winning in 2024 is to have Donald Trump as the nominee? Would you agree with that statement or not?
I think it's better, but I think it is. I think you do have to rely on history here, and the 2024 election will be a referendum on how the Democrats have done and how Joe Biden has done as president. And of course, your joker at the bottom of the deck is that he doesn't run again for whatever reason, including his age, and then all bets are off. But what really makes me sick, this just makes me sick by my stomach if Joe Biden doesn't run or can't run or for whatever reason, well, then Trump's got it. He's got it. And well, look, he got more votes than anybody ever except for Joe Biden the last time. So he's automatically going to win. Yeah, I'm going to turn to Donald Trump if Joe Biden doesn't run. Really? I just think that there's so many variables on the chessboard over this. So many that we do ourselves no good and lose a lot of brain cells trying to figure this out. So, anything else? I got a frozen screen. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good right now. You still sound good here, but we'll call it a day.
Okay. All right.
And remember, fuck AT&T. That would be our takeaway from today's show.
Not even a question. Not even a question.
We'll see you on Wednesday.